Welcome back. This week's project is number two in a four-part series. These are going to be deck railing planters. I am making four of them at the same time, but the instructions and cut list will be for a single. So obviously multiply by how many you plan on making. We are also going to be working with the same design look as the last planter because that's what's in my backyard and that's what matches my gazebo. The cut list is as follows, all cut out of 2x4s. All are going to be 1.5 inches square, 4 at 30 inches for the front and back, 4 at 6 inches for the sides, 4 at 11 inches for the corner post. We're also going to need two supports, 30 by 1.5 inches by 1 inches. The sides, front and back, are going to require 5/8 of an inch rabbet in one corner. We are going to start by cutting all the 2x4s directly in half. This gives us a nice flat reference side for the fence when we rip them down to the final size in the next step. Next, we're going to rip them down to the final size, which is 1.5 inches for most and 1 inch for the supports. This takes off the rounded edge and squares up the stock. You may notice me clearing the outfeed table. I can't stress this enough. I am ripping down the smallest pieces using two push sticks. You may see the little shards of waste shoot back. Please remember, safety glasses and a good canvas apron help a lot. All it takes is one mistake for these little suckers to become projectiles. Stay safe and smart. Now it's time for some rabbits. Not the furry kind, the rabbit in the corner of the pieces that will hold the panels you see chilling and drying out on the side of me. These rabbits are 5/8 of an inch, and I accomplished this with two passes at the table saw by setting the blade at 5/8 of an inch tall and 5/8 of an inch from the fence to the outside of the blade. Remember, it's important to do it to the outside, not the inside. This will also create some projectile waste as it clears, so just a heads up, be careful. When you are done, you should have this many pieces. 56. I'm just kidding. Remember the beginning I said I was making four of them? So you should have enough to make one planter, or however many you're going to make. You should have enough for at least one planter. Next, it's time to make some vampire murder weapons. Kidding. I am adding a decorative crown to the tops of the four corners. I accomplished this by setting the blade at the chop saw to 45 degrees, line it up with the center of the top of the post, set up a stop block, and cut down rotating the piece until you end up with a pointy end, like this. Next, I decided to add some embellishments to both the tops and the bottoms of the corner pieces. A small 1/8 of an inch channel, 3/16 of an inch deep. This requires me measuring an inch from the top and a half inch from the bottom to set up a stop block. I set the height of the blade to 3/16 of an inch and make passes rotating the piece until I get the desired effect. Pretty. Hindsight should have gone taller on the bottom. Feel free to adjust if you like. With all of that done, these are the pieces you should have. Four corner pieces, 11 by 1.5 inches square, front and back measuring 30 inches, 1.5 inch square with a 5/8 of an inch rabbet, four side pieces measuring 6 inches, 1.5 inch with a 5/8 inch rabbet, two support for the bottom measuring 1.5 inches by 1 inch. The last thing we need to do before beginning to assemble is to take the two support pieces and to put two pocket holes in each to attach them to the bottom. Next was some math to figure out where the screws would go so they wouldn't run into each other. These are going to have opposing screws on each corner holding a side and a front in place. So 1 1/8 inch from the top decorative channel and the bottom channel and 3/8 of an inch from the edge. I will be using the channels as reference points to line up the front, back, and sides. Remember, these are mirrored on the sides and I'm doing two sides at a time. Once the holes are marked, it's time to pre-drill as I will be plugging these holes after they are assembled using some wood glue and 3/8 inch dowels and a flush cut saw to trim off the excess. After tapping off the excess sawdust, it was time to start assembling. I decided that putting in the screws ahead of time made more sense. After lining up the pieces and making sure the sides were correctly orientated, remembering the rabbets have to face each other, it was time to screw it together. I used a little wood glue to hold everything together and repeated this process on each side. After all the sides were put together and doing some more math, it was time to pre-drill the holes to hold the front and back 30-inch pieces to the sides. This was pretty easy as it was 3/8 of an inch from the corner of the decorative channel and 3/8 of an inch from the face. Remember to keep your sides facing the right way. The rabbit should always be facing down. Once marked, I pre-drilled them all. After that, it was time to attach the fronts and backs using a little bit of glue, again using the decorative channels as the reference. Lastly, it was time to attach the bottom supports. Next, it was time to fill all the little holes. I used a 3/8 of an inch dowel and I dipped it in some glue, tapped it into the hole, and flush cut with a flush cut saw. Pretty on the nose with that name. Rinse and repeat until all the holes are filled. Next, it was time to sand, and sand I did every single surface. Finally, it was on to paint. I changed paints from my last project. This is a water sealing paint that I had tinted black. The last one I got was semi-transparent and it didn't like the transparency, so I had to use 2 coats. This time I went with a zero transparency, which worked out better and only needed 1 coat. Now remember those fence pickets chilling around my shop getting all dry and stuffs? It was time to stain them. So I forgot to record me staining them, so I'm just going to sneak in and use one from the last video. Same process, who's going to know? After waiting overnight for everything to dry, it was time to chop down the fence pickets to use as panels. I needed 13 at 7 1/4 inch, 6 at 6 3/4 of an inch. Let's get to putting them together. It's a tight fit, but you can attach all the panels starting with the sides. I'm using some glue and 1 inch nails to hold everything together. Remember, you will need to trim the last panel to size on every face to keep that in mind. You should have enough if you follow the cut list. Once you are done with all 4 sides, go ahead and attach the bottom. I left 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch for drainage. I did this just by eye. You can finish this with some sort of clear coat, but seeing as it's for outside, I decided to leave it as it is. And voila, just like that, you have custom railing planters that you can screw to the top of the railings or get some brackets to attach them from the side. Fun tip, these also make really nice window planters. That's it for this week's video, and as always, if you enjoyed it, please hit and like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys.